Marisol, what was your miscellaneous? Oh, Tiana, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. We put BNB hardware.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's start there. Where do you think B&B hardware would go?
We just put it there because, well, they all fit into retail technically,
Yeah.
but this was the only one I would say where it wasn't clothing related, food,
Uh-huh.
or something that can be done for recreational purposes. So
Yeah.
we just put it there.
Okay, that's fine. Well, what about somebody else? Where did you put your B&B hardware? Marisol?
Oh no, we were in the same group, so I also had it
Oh,
in
sorry.
employees.
Okay. Anybody else find a category for B&B hardware? Everybody had it in miscellaneous? Okay, great. So what I would do then would be to now have the teachable moment where I would describe some of the aspects of whatever that word might be and the attributes of the word, and we would come to an agreement as to which category best fit that particular word. Okay, so obviously it's a hardware store. It may be that the hardware store focuses more on automotive, so we may put it there. It depends on some of the attributes that I share with the group, so we can have a discussion about it and decide as a group which would be the best category to put it under. Was there any other miscellaneous? Marisol?
We had no idea what static was.
Right. Does anybody have a category for static? Okay, good. And you shouldn't, because static is my red herring. It's the one that I bank that nobody would know because static is a skateboard store. So once I taught you what that was, then you could put it into either recreation or retail, depending upon what your preference was. Right. So again, take the red herrings and you demonstrate how to give the attributes to determine which category into which it would fit. Did anybody have roots as a miscellaneous? Okay, some of you did. So does somebody know what roots is? Yes, Leah?
It's a clothing store from Canada.
Right, it's a Canadian store. They do a lot of sweats and sweatshirts, things like that. And again, this is one of those that I would figure some of you might know and some of you might not. And so again, we teach the attributes of that particular word, and then we come to a decision as to which category it might go to. Now, as students share their categories and their words, they may find that they have something that doesn't belong in a particular category. So that's a great place to stop, discuss, and determine which category best would fit that word, and then move that word into that category. So this becomes a discussion tool as you engage in debriefing on the sheet. The instructions for inductive data set are in this on the pages preceding this particular activity. It's a great way to get kids into sharing and discussing the information. And even as a pre-reading activity, they can begin to make predictions as to which word might go where, because they may know the word, but they may not know its use in terms of the context of the content that they're going to be learning. Okay? So it's another one of those great activities to get kids into more of an active learning scenario. Now, the other thing that's interesting is we know that listening comprehension comes before reading comprehension. It's usually about 2 or 3 years ahead. So a child reading on a fourth grade level may be able to listen to books and understand books and material written beyond a reading level. It's the listening vocabulary that fuels his reading vocabulary. So in terms of vocabulary instruction, another way that can be constructive is to read excerpts of the text to the student. And if you pre-taught the vocabulary words that you may think may trip them up, then that's another way to build in additional recognition. Because kids can learn and understand more sophisticated print beyond their reading level when it's read to them. And that's how a lot of vocabulary is actually picked up. You know, when we talk about the incidental learning of vocabulary, a lot of it is through our listening comprehension and listening to what other people say and mimicking that in your own speech pattern and eventually into your own writing. So reading aloud is also a very good strategy for helping kids with vocabulary. The read alouds, again, are validated in terms of what research shows. When we use a read aloud, we become a model for positive reading behaviors and the bridge to scaffolding the connection between text and real life. The teacher can also support students' responses and guide higher level thinking. Another strength of the read aloud is, again, the exposure to language and literature. So, again, because kids can understand more complicated language than their reading level, we can take time to actually read parts of the text to them. And the other part of it, too, that I think is important, is that kids begin to develop that inner voice, or what the reading sounds like in terms of its tone and its expression. We always talk about kids needing to read behind the eyeballs. I always say also we need to think about having kids read behind the earballs, in the sense that they need to begin to develop and mimic that voice. I know when I was a student in high school and I had to read social studies books that were not really very interesting at all, the only way that I was able to get through it was to pretend that the voice playing in my head was the newscaster Walter Cronkite. And I would literally imitate his voice in my head as I read the chapter. And that really helped me get through it. So developing that inner voice for what the text sounds like is important, which is why I think your voice is probably the best one for kids to hook onto in terms of being able to have that interior vocalization going of the text. And this can be for any text. And we know that fluency-based education and training programs have produced some of the most dramatic results in the history of behaviorally oriented instruction. And Carl Binder, who's been studying this for a while, came up with these ideas about how fluency generalizes to other behaviors. So I want to share with you a couple of the fluency building activities that I did. So would you find a blank sheet of paper or use the back of a page in your reader and a pen or pencil to write with? I have to set this here. Hold on 1 second. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to share with you is a great warm-up activity I used to do with my students. It's called a Fluency Builder. And what I'm going to ask you to do when I give you the go-ahead is I'm going to ask you to start writing numbers across the page. What you're going to do is you're going to count by 5s to 300. All right, so you're simply going to write numbers, not words, but numbers, 5, 10, 15, 20, across the page. And then when I say stop, then you'll go ahead and put your pen or pencil down, okay? Are you ready? Wait 1 second here, I got to set my timer. And go. And stop. Okay, I'd like you to circle the last number where you left off. Okay, let's take a little survey here. How many people got to at least 80? And 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160, 170, 180, 190? Okay, good. All right, so 180 to 190 is usually around the threshold that we finally hit. Okay, now, we're going to do this again. Same thing, we're going to start again with 5, but this time I'm going to give you an aim. And the aim is, I want you to see if you can increase it by 5 numbers. So if you got to 100, let's say, you try to get to 125, okay? So when I say go, you begin again. And what I have my kids do is I have them hold their pen or pencil up in the air so that I know they don't start early. And then when I say go, they bring it down and start, okay? Ready, set, go. And stop. Circle the last number that you left off with. Now, I'd like you to count the difference between the first trial and the second trial, and then write that number at the end of that last trial. So if you increased by 5, you'll put a 5 at the end, okay? So count the difference, and then go ahead and put a number, and then we'll do a little survey. So how many people had at least one more on the second trial? At least one? At least two? At least 3? 4? 5? Higher than 5, 6? 7? 8? 9? Okay, good. So it looks like most of you at least met the aim of 5. So again, with the Fluency Builders, it's 2 trials. And on the second trial, you give an aim, and that makes the difference, okay? Now, we're going to do one more, so bear with me. So on the second one here, we're going to do something different. We're going to start at 300, and we're going to count backwards by 7s, okay? So once again, get ready, set, and when I say go, you can begin to go ahead and write, okay? Ready, set, go. Okay, you can stop here. I won't prolong your agony at this time of night. But let's talk about the degree of difficulty difference between the two. Obviously, in this one, because the pattern isn't as automatic as pattern of counting by 5s, then the degree of difficulty is more significant. So my aim might be to get one more. All right, so maybe 1 or 2 at the most. And then we would continue to practice till I felt comfortable giving them a higher aim. Because once they begin to integrate the pattern into their spider webs, then they'll be able to do it more quickly. So this is one of the ways in which we engage kids in fluency type behavior. It's also a great warm-up activity. The way that I did this with my students is that I would have them do a warm-up at the beginning of the period before we started. They would do a fluency builder, and they would keep a sheet of paper that said fluency builder on it, and then they would keep it in the pot folder. And then when we used it, we didn't do it every day, but we would take it out and use them. And then they had the in the pot folder, and I would just check it off when I looked at it periodically. But the idea is to, again, generate not only fluency, but with accuracy, but also building the student's endurance. So every couple of weeks, I would increase it by 15 seconds to the point that we got to 2 minutes so that we could build some of that endurance that kids seem to lack these days. So there's a lot of different ways you can use fluency builders. I'll share some other ideas that I have with you. One idea would be to see how many times you can write the alphabet in 30 seconds. Of course, they may not get all the letters, but the idea is to give them an aim so they can get 5 more letters on the second trial. And they can do it sometimes in print, sometimes in cursive if they still use cursive. And sometimes I'll interrupt the pattern. So I might say, we're going to write the alphabet, but today I want you to start with the letter N and then wrap around to A, B, C, D so that this pattern is a little bit disrupted. Vocabulary words. So let's say that I have 5 vocabulary words that I'm teaching, and I put them in some sort of order, whether it's alphabetical or in sequence in terms of where it appears in the text, and then put them in a list of 5 words and have them see how many times they can replicate that list in a certain period of time. Names. These could be names of characters in a story, names of terms, for instance, in a text, could be names of scientists or mathematicians or places. Their mailing address is a good one to use too. How many times they can replicate that. Days of the week. Sometimes we'll start with Sunday, but I like to interrupt it a little bit and start with maybe Wednesday. Months of the year. So we might do the first 6 months of the year, or I might do the April, May, and June, or however I want to disaggregate the months of the year. the teacher's names. So periods 1, 2, and 3, write your teacher's names in the order that you have them, and then we'll replicate that list in 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute, wherever you are. Anything that's part of a list, so states, planets. Maybe a list of the 8 planets. We lost Jupiter due to budget cuts, I think is what it was. So that's a problem. And then, of course, math problems, you can add, subtract, multiply, or divide as much as you want to. But these are great ways to not only help kids build their fluency and endurance, but also a great way to get the kids focused in the first few moments of class. So after I do my power walk, then I would go ahead and institute a fluency builder before we get started on the day's lesson. Also, I'd use names of universities. One time I used Northeast, West, South, things like that, and taught how to determine directions, for example. So those are different ways you can do it, the fluency builders too. Now, one of the challenges that we have in secondary is that by the 5th grade, most of the reading that kids do is narrative in nature, storybook reading, those kinds of things. Maybe some content, but typically it's going to be more storybook reading. What we know, though, is that there's a shift when they get to middle school, because now about 80% of their reading is going to be informational or expository. And this presents different types of challenges for our students, particularly when it comes to fluency. If we think about fluency not only in terms of the word level of fluency, but also the phrasal fluency, where kids need to read in phrases and need to read longer and more complex sentences. So the distinctions might be that a narrative text includes such elements as a theme, a plot, a conflict, a resolution, characters, setting, lots of colorful language, and even dialogue, which makes the text reading a little shorter and simpler. In expository informational text, there's a lot more distance between the student and the text. These are categorized typically by sequence, by definition, sequence, categorization, comparison, contrast, enumeration, process, problem solving, description, or cause and effect. So one of the ways that we think about getting kids to use signal words, if you turn back to page 10, there's a 10A and 10A and 10A, sorry. So on page 10, you see a listing of signal words there. And these signal words are important because it's a signal to the student as to what the sentence or the passage is going to do. All right. So in other words, words of signal definition include words that are like refer to, in other words, consist of, is equal to, means, and is synonymous with. You typically don't find these words in narrative text. So these can be challenging. Words of signal example include, for example, for instance, such as, is, like, including, and to illustrate. So I was trying to figure out how we could make the words more familiar to students by giving them an exercise where they could actually begin to use the words in some of the tasks that we were asking them to do. Because once they acclimated to their writing, then they're probably likely to make the association when they see it in their reading. So I came up with the idea of a signal word practice exercise. You'll find this on page 10A. And we're going to try this out in a little bit, but I want to walk you through how it works. So if you notice, it says examine the paragraph below that uses signal words. To define an object, after reading the paragraph below, respond to the prompts below with your own paragraph, inserting the listed signal words. So the reference here is back to page 10, but let me show you what I did. I came up with a paragraph that defined a hamburger, and the prompt is, most people in our society have eaten a variety of hamburgers. Your task is to write a paragraph that defines a hamburger to someone who has never seen or eaten this sandwich. So then we have the paragraph, and I've put into italics the signal words that I pulled from the list on page 10. All right? Can I get a volunteer to read this? Okay, Marisol?
A hamburger refers to a type of sandwich. The burger consists of a cooked piece of meat between two slices of bread that will usually mean a bun. There are many ways to add to this delicious meal with lettuce, tomato, onions, pickles, etc. In other words, there are many ways to prepare a hamburger. There are many types of fast food hamburgers that people buy. Some might say that a Burger King Whopper is equal to a Carl's Jr. Famous Star, or that a McDonald's Big Mac is synonymous with an In-N-Out Double Double. Hamburgers are one of the most popular fast foods, and people consume millions every year.
All right, so you never thought you'd hear such an expository paragraph about the burger, right? So I tried to come up with something that would be a fairly common experience where most people have had hamburger and know something about it. So then I have some other prompts here listed that follow the pattern of the different types of signal words. So one of them is example. What are some examples of the types of fast food hamburgers available to your hungry public? Then listing, in your opinion, describe in order what you think are the most popular fast food hamburgers. Sequential listing, what are the steps to cooking and preparing a hamburger? Analysis, why do you think fast food hamburgers are such a popular food item? Comparison, how are the hamburger and other types of sandwiches similar? Or contrast, how are hamburgers and other typical sandwiches different? And cause and effect. Now that it is known that fast food hamburgers are very high in calories, what might be the effects on a person if they were to eat fast food hamburgers every day? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is pick one of the prompts, starting with example. Look at the list of signal words underneath that category on page 10, and let's take about 5 minutes and have you write a short paragraph that answers the prompt and utilizes the signal words in that particular category. Okay, and then we'll come back and share some of these, and pick whichever one you want. take about another minute. Okay, it looks like we have some people who are finished. Let's share a few of these, and then we'll talk about how we scaffold. I'll give you some different options for how to do this. Would anybody like to share one that they did, and just tell us which one it was, and we'll go ahead and hear it. Would like to share one? Okay, Marisol, thank you. Which one did you do?
I did the contrast one.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the contrast one. Howard hamburgers and other typical sandwiches different.
Great.
I wrote typical sandwiches are usually made on sandwich type loaf bread, such as white, wheat, rye, etc. On the other hand, hamburgers are usually made on potato buns or made with potato buns. Additionally, typical sandwiches are usually made with some sort of deli meat like ham, turkey, roast beef, bacon, etc. Whereas hamburgers are usually made with a beef patty or some sort of like beef or turkey patty. That was pretty much what I put.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. And thank you very much. Let's hear another one who'd like to share one too. Don't run to the front of the line. Walk slowly. Who'd like to share? Let's hear one more. Okay, Leah.
Sorry. Don't need to hear wheels on the bus, but let's see. I did the sequential
Okay.
listing. I said, to cook and prepare a hamburger, first one needs to take raw ground beef and pat the meat into flat circular patties. Second, season both sides of the patty with pepper and a pinch of salt. Then add dried or raw onion to the patty for extra flavor. Next, heat a skillet to low to medium heat. Then place the patty on the heated skillet and cook the patty on each side for about 5 to 7 minutes. That's
Okay.
where I finished.
Okay. So then the goal is you have a lot of words to work in there. So that's a longer prompt. So the goal would be to try to get as many words as you can in. What you notice is that the tone of writing has a different flavor than more narrative writing. So one of the things that we're trying to acclimate kids to is by using the idea of expository writing, we're familiarizing them with a little bit more of what the tone is of how to do this type of writing, but we're using reading as an entryway into that, and we're accommodating them with signal words that they can, again, be able to recognize. So the way that I would scaffold this for my students would be, one is to give them an example of, just like I did with you on the definition, then pick another one and put in all the words in the paragraph, but I would omit the signal words, and then ask the kids to see if they can determine which signal word might best fit there. In so doing, we're also exercising their comprehension, believe it or not. And this also would be a great think, pair, share activity, or a small group activity, a pod activity, to have them see if they can agree as to which one. So all we're doing here is we're trying to adapt them to understand the role the signal words play to move it into their subconscious in a way so that when they see a signal word in the text they're reading, they know that it'll signify one of these different contrasts. This is particularly good for language development for English learners, but I think it's also appropriate for English speakers. I want to show you one more thing in this section. If you'll turn to page 11. Another way that we help students with fluency in the text is through the line of dialogue or questioning that we use in unpacking and guiding students through understanding text. And there are basically 6 text frames that researchers, in this case Doug Buell, a friend of mine, has attempted to sort because the textbooks typically fall into one of these 6 categories. So one of them on page 11 at the top is a problem solution text frame, as we call it. And the line of questioning here, it helps the students to disaggregate the information that is in that text selection. So for example, if you just follow the lines of questions, what is the problem? Who has the problem? What is causing the problem? What are the effects of the problem? Who is trying to solve the problem? What solutions are recommended or attempted? What results from these solutions? Is the problem solved? And do any problems develop because of the solutions? This provides a great sequence of questioning for you to use in framing your class discussion. And you can actually link it to the type of text that once you determine the pattern, you can link it to that type of pattern or the type of text. Or you can determine how you want to approach the text based upon one of the patterns in which you think is the best fit. So for example, in a cause and effect frame, the questions begin, what is it that happens and what causes it to happen? What are the different elements or factors that cause the effect? How do these factors or elements interrelate to each other, et cetera, et cetera? Excuse me. Then on page 12, there are 2 more text frames. And these are great ways to orchestrate a class discussion. Once you've done the introductory part of the text and the kids have engaged in some aspect of reading the text, or if you give these questions out in advance so that the kids know what you're looking for, that's even better, so that when you go back to talk to them, then they have some ideas of where you're going. So in a compare and contrast frame, what's being compared or contrasted, what categories or characteristics or attributes are used to compare and contrast these things, how are things alike or similar, how are things not alike or different, the most important qualities or attributes that make them similar or make them different. So you get the idea that these are questionings that you can utilize as you get engaged in the discussion. The next frame is goal, action, outcome frame. Who are the people involved? This probably would be more in line with social studies. Who are the people involved? What are they trying to do or achieve? What is their goal? What actions do they take to achieve their goal? What are the effects of their actions, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last 2 on page 13, a concept definition frame, probably more a part of science. What is the concept? What category does it belong? What are its critical attributes? How does it work? What does it do? What are its functions? Examples of it, non-examples. And then proposition support frame. What is the general? This probably would be fitting into more different types of texts. What's the general topic, area, or issue? What proposition, viewpoint, or thesis is being presented? How is the proposition supported? Are examples provided? And by the way, this one here is also a great rubric to introduce students to writing, because these are the qualities that you're looking for in a composition or an essay. So again, these frames are useful in a variety of ways. Again, one way is to use these as guiding questions when you're discussing your content, and very user-friendly. Back to our screen here. Okay, so again, the hamburger activity, we get at the signal words through giving them a little writing practice. And also, as a trade-off, we're trying to familiarize them with a little bit of expository writing, which they're going to need for most of their classes. Because, again, social studies and science, while we want them to do writing, that's probably not a place where they're going to do creative writing. We want them to demonstrated understanding through writing. When we get to the writing across the curriculum at the end of the semester, we'll get more into that as well. So bottom line is when we watch kids struggle with reading textbooks, it's like watching young kids at dinner toying with their food. You know, just sort of sample the pages, try to taste it a little bit, and then either walk away from it or feed it to the dog, as we might say. Okay? So with fluency, again, we talk about phonology, sounds, and symbols. We talk about the morphology in terms of vocabulary and how words work and how meaning changes even with a single morpheme or a single letter. And then the orthography is the spelling and the writing conventions that we want to integrate into our instruction as well, not only through the modeling of reading texts, but also engaging them in some writing as well. So in terms of domains of interaction and fluency, some questions that we need to think about are what are the decoding skills the students come to us with? What assets do they have in terms of being able to be good decoders? We want to know how students express prosody, which is why when we engage them in that oral reading exercise for assessment, are they reading with prosody in the sense that they're capturing the author's language, intonation, inflection, the musical score, so to speak, of the text? And can they effectively shift approaches depending on what they read? Again, we're able to shift our approaches when we're reading narrative versus expository. You don't read a poem the same way that you would read a menu at a restaurant, for example. So we're able to be light on our feet in shifting approaches. A lot of our students may not have that ability to do so. Okay, for us, this is the other class. Hold on 1 second, I need to change something here. I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, this is going to look a little bit different. Can you hear me okay? Am I coming across good? So on page 1A in your reader, in Reader Part 1, we were working on a keyword summarizer right behind the syllabus. So the next square down is you're going to record some ideas relative to the idea of fluency. So if you open up that, I don't have the slide here that's prepared for that. This is a different slide from my in-person classes, but it's the same type of idea. So what you're going to do is in the next square down, or pick a square that you choose, you're going to indicate some of the things you take away from this notion of fluency.
Sorry, you said page 1A?
It's right in Reader Part 1. It's right behind the syllabus. We were working on it earlier, and then we went to page 23, and now we're back. Yeah, that's it. Kate has it right there. Okay. Well, we have a brain break coming on here. So let's see what these are. Okay, ready for a brain break? Here we go. Patient. Doc, I think I'm shrinking. Doc, nonsense. Be a little patient. I don't know. So, here's another one. Sherlock Holmes and Watson went on a camping trip. As they lay down for the night, Holmes said, Watson, look into the sky and tell me what you see. Watson looked up and said, I see millions and millions of stars. Holmes said, and what does that tell you? Watson replied, astronomically, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets. Theologically, it tells me that God is great and that we are small and insignificant. Watson continued, it tells me that meteorologically speaking, tomorrow we will have a beautiful day. What does it tell you? Holmes replied, it tells me that somebody has stolen our tent. Okay, we have some time for some IQ karaoke. So we'll take the first of 5 that sign up in the chat. So we're going to be looking at IQ, and it's going to be either the chapter 8 in the article or page 20. So Karen Gonzalez and Luis. Amelia, got room for a couple more.
Ready?
I choose the part that Matthew said, the rich get richer and the poor gets poorer.
Wait a minute. Tell me what you're reading from.
Oh, is the page 21 of the second part of the book.
Okay, you're going to be fourth in line, so hold on.
Oh,
I've got 3 ahead of you. Anybody else want to go? Room for one more. Okay, is that Kat?
Yeah, just a quick question. It doesn't matter which article, right?
Right.
Okay.
You want to go? Okay. Okay, Luis, did you want to go too? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with Luis. Tell us what article or chapter you're in and then the page number.
It's page 20 from the reader part 2.
Okay.
So the quote I wrote is, although one might be able to pronounce words solely on the basis of orthographical knowledge, such ability adds little to comprehension if the person has no idea of the meaning of the word. And then I wrote, I learned that there are 2 possible reasons why there are children who can read words but not understand it. The first is that there are children who have a hard time deriving the words from the context, and that the second reason is because poor readers read less and less. Since I am going to be teaching soon, I need to approach new vocabulary terms to the students in a certain way. One of the ways I plan to introduce new terms is through reading aloud. In math, when we introduce new terms, there are students who may feel confused. If I read aloud and draw a visual of the words, the students will learn through context and listening at the same time. I do agree that students are able to read and pronounce a word. However, it doesn't mean we understand if they do. Overall, I think it's important to always make sure to check on your students if they understand the new terms that you have introduced in the class.
Good. Now, one of the ways that we think about that in terms of formative assessment is to mine the text for a lot of words that we feel are going to be more of their tier 3 words, maybe even occasionally tier 2, meaning they're not necessarily content specific, but they may be transition words that kids don't know, or even signal words. And then when we put them on the list, we ask the kids to either put a plus sign or a minus sign, determining whether they feel they know what the word is or they don't know what the word is. So we can collect data, and then we can target our instruction based upon that. Another reason why kids have difficulty with informational text is that oftentimes there's not a lot of context around the word itself. And context oftentimes relies on prior knowledge. So if kids don't have the prior knowledge and can't make an inference about what the word might mean, then they're not likely to comprehend it, and a lot of meaning will be lost. So these are challenges that we face, which is why I think it's important that all teachers engage their kids in in vocabulary instruction. Okay, thank you. Karen Gonzalez, the mic is yours.
Hello, I chose the article, page 24. It says another approach to sensitize students to difficult words in the text might be having groups of students preview a text and choose the words for instruction instead of having the teacher select the words. Such an approach appears to be successful with poor readers as well as better readers. I chose this expert because it demonstrates how teachers can incorporate their students into their direct instruction. Students can provide a broader range of vocabulary words because both good readers and poor readers are choosing words for the instruction. If the teacher chooses the words, they may or may not fail to choose words that are not difficult for the students. Also, by having the students choose the words, the teacher is able to evaluate where students are struggling in their vocabulary journey and see how or if it improves throughout the class.
So there's a couple of benefits to this too. One is you're allowing the students to preview the text, because as they're scanning the words, they're also sampling what the text is about. And when they make their choice as to the word, part of it is because it's a word that they may not know in context, but they may be picking up surrounding information around that word. So they're getting a good preview of the text. The other thing is we can make it a collaborative process with kids brainstorming words. And I like to do this in pods, have the kids brainstorm and come up with a list. But I, as the teacher, if I'm not seeing words on the list that I feel are important, then I can add my own words to the list. So it becomes collaborative in that way. And then we can also survey the class to see if anybody has any understanding of what a word might be. And if we can determine that the understanding can be shared, then we may be able to take that off the list as one word less that we need to study. So we could have conversation around the language of the text, which also is good for their oral language development at the same time. Okay, thank you, Karen. Kalia.
So I chose a quote. It's on page 28 of part 2, The Reader. In like the top right-hand corner of the page, it says, open classroom discussion affords the poor students the opportunity to learn from the better students in a non-threatening manner. I thought this quote really made sense to me, that struggling students can learn from more advanced students in an open classroom environment and not feel threatened or pressured if they don't know the meaning of a word. And it talked about like semantic mapping techniques, which I thought are like an excellent tool to use in open classroom discussions to teach word meanings. Semantic mapping targets a specific word, and the students work collaboratively to discuss the meaning of the word by mapping to other related words. I thought that this collaboration also allowed for preconceptions and misconceptions to be discussed openly with peers. It also allowed students to gain ideas and knowledge from other students. And more advanced students could even act as like mentors for the less advanced students. I also said that I believe that one of the most effective teaching tools for teaching and learning is communication, collaboration, and engagement. So I thought these open classroom discussions were an excellent way to help students learn.
Yeah, and I think that's important because a lot of times kids may be afraid to share that they don't know a word, but this is a way to get it out there. And when they find that other kids are having trouble with the same words, then there's a little bit more security in that. It's also a great way to assess through discussion their understanding of the word, so that if I need to hang more meat on the word, or tofu in some cases, that I can do so. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to Laura and then Kat.
Yes, I chose from the book, the second part, page 21, from the title, Why Gap Between Good and Poor Readers. And there are two possible explanations for this difference in the size of the meaning vocabularies of good and poor readers. One of the explanations has been that good readers are more able to derive word meanings from context than poorer readers. However, several studies of the amount of word meanings children actually do learn accidentally from context fail to find difference to children's ability. So the suggestion that able and less able readers can acquire word meaning from context at roughly at the same rate. And the second explanation is that because poor readers tend to read less than better readers, the gap between good and poor readers is absolute numbers of words become progressively greater as the child progresses through the school. And I choose this part just because of the comparison that they are doing with Matthew Effect discussed. I have read I Am a Lector at Church, and I didn't find the meaning of this. But here in the book is so clear that says the Matthew Effect suggests that the rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer, and vocabulary and other aspects of reading. And before it didn't make sense in my head, that reading, but now that I read it here, of course, if you read more, you are going to acquire more vocabulary. If you are not a reader, it's like you are not progressing, right? Yes.
So in our case, then, this is why I say that vocabulary instruction needs to be a part of every class. And oftentimes, we see vocabulary instruction done in English classes, but not that often in other classes. So it is important for everybody to take charge of that idea. Okay, thank you. Kat, you're going to bring it home.
Yes, I did page 22 from the reader, part 2. I chose a really simple, like one sentence quote because I wanted to talk about like all of it. So I put, one productive approach is to teach children how to be more proficient at figuring out a word's meaning from context. I put, when I was reading this passage, I reflected on these strategies and approaches provided. I thought the strategies and approaches that were provided were essential. Students who are at a low reading level or students who have difficulty with comprehension can definitely benefit from these strategies and approaches, even if they are being so-called cajoled into doing so. It's for their own benefit in regards to strengthening their ability to use context, minimizing consistency, and strengthening their knowledge. I also wanted to add on that I like that after it talked about how difficult teaching context to a student who doesn't know that many words, it provided more strategies like the SCANR, teaching students to develop their own strategies to context clues, and then I put in parentheses looking in, and then the concept of and also just to add on, the concept of definition diagram reminded me of the Freyer model, and we use this in my classroom when we are introducing new vocabulary words or going over difficult words in our readings.
So, in the Quick Write, one of the things that we talk about is when you choose a word, it can be a word you don't know. And when these words are shared, it's a great teachable moment to jump into a vocabulary lesson. Strategies that you talked about, like looking inside, looking outside. Looking inside, again, is more of a metalinguistic study about the roots and the affixes of the word and how it affects the meaning and understanding the root. Looking outside has to do more with context. And oftentimes, again, as was said, when kids don't have a lot of background knowledge, because creating context relies on not only inference, but also the amount of background knowledge that kids have. sometimes that won't be an effective strategy for poor readers. So by isolating the word and giving them context, as we did in the examples about showing definition, showing contrast, and showing example, with the ones that I shared with you, we can create those contexts, and that will help kids solidify their understanding of the word so that when they see it in text, then they'll be able to make the association. Okay, thank you very much. Nice job. Okay, so for next week, the IQ, no quick write. Again, remember, we're done with that series. The IQ we're going to be looking at is Chapter 7 in VACA, Guiding Reading Comprehension. And here we'll begin to get into some of where the rubber meets the road in terms of classroom strategies that we can employ. And let me just sort of frame this idea for you that part of the idea behind the IQs and the keyword summarizers is so that you have at your disposal a more or less executive summary of the reading that you've done, so that it can become a reference for you when you start your own classroom. You have the VACA text, the readers, and the executive summaries of the IQs and the quick writes to serve as a frame of reference for when you want to dive a little more deeply into some of the strategies that will be available to you in your teaching. So this is why we try to make it as practical for you as we can in terms of this class. All right, so Chapter 7 for next week. We'll see you at the same time for our annual weekly broadcast. The week after that, I think we're off on Thanksgiving, so then we'll have 2 more sessions to finish up. Again, you can find the checklist, as well as I also posted the mediation protocol and the class processing sheet that we shared last week. Those are also posted in Canvas. I forgot to tell you that. If you have any questions during the week, feel free to email me. Be sure to drop everything that you need to into your folders so that I can work on them this weekend and get the comments back to you. So with that, I want to wish you all a good week. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay warm. And I'll see you all 7 o'clock next Thursday evening. Take care, everybody. Have a good week.
Good night. Thank you.
Am I muted?